right, folks, I think we'll go ahead and get started. I want to welcome you all here tonight to our public forum on the Project Drive relocation and the SAU Maintenance Building Project. I'm so glad to have this opportunity this evening to bring some of the members of our community together to talk about the building project, to talk a bit about the history of the Bales building, our Project Drive program, the relocation of Project Drive and reintegration of Project Drive to the high school, as well as the SAU Maintenance Building Project. SAU Maintenance Building Project was one of the projects that was represented in the feasibility study that was conducted by LaValle Brenzinger Architects and their team of engineers. With us this evening is Bob from LaValle Brenzinger. Thanks for joining us here tonight, Bob. Also, a part of our presentation here this evening is our Facilities Director, Mr. Cooper. Thank you so much for being here. And I'm Christine Michaud, Superintendent of Schools. We're going to start this evening with a video. Chris Gentry and his assistant, Andy Karopoulos, they did a video tour of the Bales building. And just yesterday, Mr. Cooper and I had an opportunity to do a voice over the video. That video is just being put together at this point between the voiceover and the recording, and will be available out on your town community television as well as some various social media platforms as well. So that'll be something available for yourself and your families and your neighbors to review. The video is about 17 minutes long, and following the video, Bob from LaValle Brenzinger, he has a bit of a presentation that will take you through some various aspects of the feasibility study that was conducted last year for our district. And I think we'll go ahead and get started, if that's okay. We've got a small group, so please don't hesitate to ask questions as we go along. And because the voiceover of this video was completed yesterday, what I'm going to try to do, and I think Mr. Cooper will do the same, is as the video is moving along, we'll do some of our speaking as it moves along. All right? Sound good, Mr. Cooper? The historic Bales building, built in 1894, is over 128 years old. The Bales building sits in the front left corner of the Jacques Memorial School location at 1 Elm Street, Milford, New Hampshire. The Bales building was once Centennial High School, and then used as an elementary school, and then unoccupied for several years until March of 2004. When the fire at Garden Street caused for the temporary relocation of the Project Drive program. What was planned to be a temporary location for Project Drive continues almost 20 years later as an alternative educational program for approximately 25 high school students and 5 middle schoolers at this time. Both regular education and special education students benefiting from small class sizes, individual small group services and supports, attend Project Drive program daily. Students travel between the high school and the Bales building throughout the day, taking some courses at the high school and attending other classes at the Bales building. Transportation costs for busing back and forth between the high school and the Bales building is an approximate cost of $70,000 annually. Aging buildings and rapidly increasing costs prompted the Milford School Board in 2020 to vote to hire LaValle Brenzinger and its team of civil, mechanical, and electrical engineers to conduct an assessment of the conditions of the district's facilities. The feasibility study, completed and shared with the board last spring, provides important information, especially as our district prepares to address repair and maintenance projects totaling $42 million that have been deferred over several years. As you know, maintaining facilities is of critical importance to the students, parents, and and members of the community, and it protects your investments as taxpayers as well. In the upcoming months, as your superintendent of schools, I'll be working together with the Milford School Board, the Milford Budget Advisory Committee, to prioritize and plan for funding projects, short and long term, as part of capital improvement planning. A detailed report of the conditions of each of our buildings can be found at the Milford School District website on the facilities page. Tonight we'll learn more about the significant concerns of the Bales building, including non-compliance of ADA standards, building energy codes, end-of-life electrical and mechanical systems, and life and fire safety systems needing upgrade as well.
See, we use the Bales building as a storage unit as well. The library was the old library right here. Most of this furniture has been there 3 to 4 years. Every 3 years, we've gotten a 30-yard dumpster and gone in and taken out all the old stuff that no one wants anymore. Even with the pandemic, with COVID, high school, middle school, and Heron Pond kept all their furniture at their buildings. Jocks, put some of their stuff in there, mostly the kindergarten. We have that to one side, but this furniture has stayed there throughout. So we're sitting on all this furniture. It's in a increased fire load, and the sprinkler system is not designed to pick up that load. If we had a fire in there or underneath the gym, it would overtake the building. Yes, that's what we're being told. We had a triangle fire system where out of Bales came in and did a detailed report and went through the whole thing. So we're actually going to go through next week during school vacation week. We're going to flush the system and replace some worn out gated parts that we need, gauges, stuff like that. And lighten the load not only there but underneath the gym. Underneath the gym is where we have mostly buildings around. Keep all our air filters for the gym. So whenever we want to do air filter changes to each building, which we do every quarter, we go down, we pick them up, we go out to the building. But having the state fire marshal's office, the fire department, walk through, they said this building will be overtaken because the sprinkler system isn't designed to pick up all this stuff. And granted, the system's 50, 60 years old. So back then, we weren't using it for that. So you'll see underneath the gymnasium. So that, what you're looking at right there is old food service equipment that has to be removed. So once again, whenever we have someone puts in a work order and says, I don't need this piece of equipment anymore, this piece of furniture, can you bring it to Bales? So we've been obliging them and doing that. And that's not going to be the case anymore. So we used to keep all our custodial supplies down there. We have since moved 90% of it out to each building so that they have their stuff at the middle school, Heron Pond, high school. We thought it'd be a great idea to have one they're in the electrical room right now. A lot of the inspection report that we have, there was a lot of punctures and penetrations between floors that were covered up, so the electric put ceiling tiles out. We've never seen. So we went in over the last 2 weeks and used fire pocket, and we also used a fire hose bolt. You can stuff those. So we've been doing that. And we took care of all the penetrations going through the floor, through the walls.
So it's fully fire rated.
Correct. That's what the fire department had asked us to do, and that's what we did. So the reason they have a picture on this is all station is supposed to be 42 inches above the floor. These are like 5 feet, 5.5 feet. The only thing that I could come up with when they were using it as an elementary school, they didn't want anybody pulling on them, so they left them up high. But now that codes have changed and we have to, we were to occupy it, we were to bring Project Drive over here and a lot of people think the SAU should go with it. We'd still have to do that because it's in non-compliance. Such as these doors here leading to the gym, they're not fire rated. So we have to replace all the fire doors on both stairwells to get hour and a half fire rating. The gym roof had some leaks in it. It's old tar and gravel. The gym was built in 1939, I believe, when Harold Bales was still the administrator of superintendent. That there is a hand crank for bringing up one of the baskets which we don't do anymore. There's no reason to bring them up. Gym floor is in good shape. Windows need to be replaced. They rattle. You can feel when it's cold out. Windy. That's the stage. That equipment right there was donated by proper software to the school district. Prior to Santina being the director, we had an agreement with the fire department. We caged off half of the second floor and the third floor. So unless you were with the building and ground department, no one could get in. Previous special services director that was there lobbied one of the fire chiefs at the time, and against my judgment, they said that they shouldn't go to the rest of the second floor or the third floor. I consider it urban sprawl, and it gives us a bigger issue. The fire department said yes. The current chief Flaherty, agreed with me and didn't want to see that either, but he wasn't chief. So that's how they got to picking up the entire building. Which is not what we wanted. We had the third floor decommissioned at one time, and everything was working great. That's the attics. That's the attic. So that's where they used to keep the books at one time. But the reason they took pictures of all this, they're looking at the sprinkler now. Those have to be replaced, but it was a rite of passage, I believe, for any of the students that were graduating from Bales to go up into the attics and sign their names to the rafters. We have some of them that go back to 1936. So it's actually pretty neat up there when you look at it, if you're looking at just the names. And there's people that, Chris Gentry, when he was looking at it, said, I know that person, I just saw that person the other day. So it's actually... No, nothing. It was just stuff on it.
Oh, that looked like a story.
They used to be out there.
Is that the light or is that
That's light. coming through the windows. This is the classroom for up on the third floor. Believe it or not, it says, "I'm watching you." So we were chuckling about that. No one was up there. So. Correct.
So all of special services is on the second floor with the students?
Students are on the first floor. Second floor has the
When you
office.
say first floor, it's still the
That's still the first, considered the first floor.
Okay,
Where the main entrance, entrance,
so the offices are still,
one floor up.
okay.
So it's a three-story building with a basement.
And, well, no, the attic is actually.
Attics are on the
On
other
the
side.
third
They're, that's why it's called uninhabitable. There's no insulation in it.
So, in the entranceway, you have to go up, and that's the first floor.
That's considered the first floor.
And then below that is
The basement, where all the furniture is stored.
all the students are on the
First floor.
first floor. Academic offices above.
Yeah, so we have the director's office up there. We have support staff up there. IT is there. We have a room for IT.
How many people total in the building? The maximum?
So there's 30 students and then staff, so 50 people tops at any one time, transition.
This is where your max is.
Yeah, we're not even close.
You've already said this, I'm sorry to interrupt.
That's okay.
What are the plans for Bales should this pass? What is the whole plan to do with Bales?
We're gonna,
Letting it go vacant, letting it go
Yeah.
else?
No. so what we have to do is, just like, when I first got here in 2003, Bales was vacant. We had to maintain the fire alarm system, the sprinkler system, the heating system, electrical, water. We had to maintain that. We walked the building twice a week to make sure no one got in, we didn't have any problems.
Because it's
That's
still a
our-
public building.
Well,
You're
let's
still
just say-
required to meet those standards,
Well,
whether
what
it's
are the
being
plans?
inhabited or not.
What are the plans long-term for the building? I mean, the school owns the property. It's a shame to just let it sit there and you haven't got to keep the general maintenance. What is the long-term plan should this building pass?
Because our feasibility study reported that we could be putting up to $8 million worth of work in that building, the plan would be for us to no longer utilize that building, with the thought that perhaps down the road there would be a sale of the building. There's certainly folks out there that have ideas about using the Bales building for apartment buildings, or sometimes you see these old buildings being picked up by colleges and universities.
Is that the ultimate goal to just dump it?
Well,
Just curious, I'm just.
well, I think there's a decision that needs to be made, right? It's, it needs about $8 million worth of work. And so is it, is it the idea of the community to put the money into the Bales building and preserve it, perhaps? Or to move on to
I have
a
another
different
question in conjunction with that. How much of that work we have at Advanced Technology Center, is there any of this that the students will be participating in for the cost of that? So we're trying to promote the trades here. Is there anything that could be cost-wise brought down by bringing our students in and giving them some hands-on work?
We'd have to research that further. Certainly when it comes to those educational type systems and things, there's lots of codes and standards and
Oh, I
things that have to be
But it would be nice
followed.
to be able to utilize the students and give them some hands-on around the school district for things that the schools actually need.
So to bring the building up to, like, windows, doors, the basement, it requires $3.5 million. To be clear, the $8 million is adding in an elevator, which will make it ADA compliant. If it's sold as a private building, it doesn't necessarily need an elevator, but it's used for storage. And for a kid to go into this environment that's so dangerous.
Oh, I get that, I totally get that, I'm just trying to feel out what the overall plan is as well. And what if there aren't students in it, what if it's just offices or other use for the school, does it have to have an elevator in it as well?
So,
Just curious.
yeah, no,
Just
so,
trying to gather all my
there's a couple, there's, in the background, there's a lot of things in play. First thing is asbestos abatement. It's permeates that building. It's not around pipes, it's underneath the carpet because it's in the floor tile. So we're gonna have to abate the entire building. That could take 6 months to do that. Then we're looking at upgrading all the mechanical, all the electrical, all the life safety, all the plumbing. Then windows, and then the doors. So right now, what we're doing, just to satisfy some of the requirements that the fire department has placed on us, is we're getting that system flush, the sprinkler system, and we're actually replacing some of the fire doors with metal doors on the first level, the basement and the first level, is all we're doing right now. So that's our start. ADA requirements, when we hit a certain threshold on either money, or I'll let Bob.
It's replacement cost, the percentage. The replacement cost.
We have to put in an elevator, and it's not 4 stops, it's 5. Because the gymnasium is 12 inches above the first floor. So we have to hit that in order to say, hey, if you need to use the gym, we can't put a ramp in because it's a 12-to-1, and we don't have enough space to bring it up. All that has to be done. The rear stairs have to be replaced. There's a lot of work. The entire exterior of the building has to be repointed. If you look, when they first opened up, you saw some cracks. All the masonry joints have to be redone. And when they did the parking lot, they paved right up to the bottom of the windows on the basement level, and it's creating havoc for us on the back side. So all the snow sits there. We've actually had a car, mother's teacher got her on a drive, and they ran into the building, into the windows, and pushed it a little bit. So, those are the things that happen. I mean, it's an accident, but all that we have to do. So, there's a lot of work that has to be done.
So, you talk about decommissioning it, moving all the kids out, moving the offices out, moving them to high school. How do you get around all of the costs to keep it heated so the pipes don't freeze and make sure the sprinklers work enough so that it doesn't?
So the sprinkler system is a dry system. So you've got compressed air in there, and it holds back. So if we pop it head because of the fire, all the air rushes out and the water comes in. So I'm not worried about freezing the sprinkler system. The building I can bring down to 40 degrees and it won't freeze as far as heat. Right now, we're running the boilers on a daily basis, and I can do the comparison when they're off during the summer and when they're on during the fall and winter. We don't have building automation controls. They're either on or off, and it's costing us a lot of money. So I can actually take one boiler offline because I don't need to have that capacity of heat in there. And then I can just keep it at 40, 45 degrees in that building.
So
And we would be okay.
zero cost. In the presentations that we've seen, you see the cost savings to not have to spend money on the building open, but there is still cost.
A little bit.
Jenny, we took that into consideration when we presented this number here of a savings of $20,000 in annual repairs and maintenance. We also made spoke to the, sort of the difference, right? If, first, maybe
So-
it'd be helpful,
so-
better to explain.
Right, so what we,
This cost is much higher.
right, yeah, so that cost that you had there, so it's $70,000 for bus transportation, just to bring the students from that building to this building on a daily basis. This is what we spend per year. I pulled all of the repair and maintenance for the building, and we would save, if I could decommission the building and walk away and not have to do anything to it, $50,000 to $60,000 a year. So, we went with a conservative number because you have another building, I have to run this one a little. So we were talking 20, maybe 30,000 we could save. We wouldn't have to go over there and work on the heater in classroom 1 because it's leaking or something, because we could bring that down. So there is still a little bit of a cost to that building, but not as much as if we were operating on a daily basis.
Really historic site?
Yes, it is, but, so with a historic site on the state register, I can still take the building down, and there's nothing that stops us from doing that. We can put new windows in that are not architectural. We can do a lot to bring the building up to code. Would it look good? No. Would it sit well with the residents? Probably not. But there's nothing in the state, in their guidelines that say we have to keep it the way it looks.
So raising the building to the ground is not.
I wouldn't do it. If I was told I had to do it by the school board or the powers that be, then, we would end up doing that. But that's not what
As if you're a real estate investor, maybe overall problems that.
So one of the thoughts was we could sell the building. If we were to do that, it would be very unattractive if I was a buyer because it's landlocked. Because if you own the building and we're still operating the school and you say, I'm working on my building, you can't get by, I can't bring the kids to school, we would have to sell that as a package. Is it more attractive that way? Probably.
Would shock me more.
Correct. And I think then they have all that land there, and they can do whatever they want, but I think it's kind of tough when you look at that one building. So that's why instead of looking to raise the building or sell it, we would just decommission it and keep it in mothballs for right now.
As I understand it, you can't, when you sort the building, you can't walk away and then come in.
Correct. I have to keep it maintained.
You have to do one other thing, you have to equate any cost, exposure, right? And the decommissioning process,
Only,
so
so,
to sell it.
yeah, if we had to, but, if someone was gonna renovate, we have the 3-year HERA report coming this summer, because it's due this year, 22. So we'll be doing high school, what's left of the middle school, and Bales. Those are the only 3 buildings that we have asbestos in the buildings. So we have to do our 3-year report.
What is the plan B if this doesn't pass? Do you plan to keep the Project Granite Bales? Is there a contingency where you could still move Project Granite back up to the high school to get temporary classroom type things to use as offices for SAU? What is the contingency?
Yeah, and so if the project doesn't pass, I think there's still a desire to reintegrate Project Drive back to the high school. The space that they would occupy would be what is presently the SAU space. SAU officers would be then, we would look to lease the space. We started looking at leased spaces around town, as you can imagine. There's not a lot available for us to look at, but there are a few spaces that we've begun looking at.
I know before they've done like the temporary classrooms in the middle school, whatever, is that even feasible to bring something like that in, like on the school property? So you're not having to lease out another space? I don't know what the
Mr. Cooper
possibility of
stated
that is.
So you're talking portables?
I don't know.
I am not a fan
I'm
of
just knowing they were there in the
The
middle
modular
school
buildings.
before, so I didn't
It's,
know.
affordables, we've talked about it, we run out of room. And we have it at the middle school. Here at the high school, there's really no place we could put, could we carve out a spot? Maybe, but it wouldn't be attached to the building, just the way it is. Jocks, same thing, year when I got here, I'm so happy to see those things.
Oh,
The
absolutely.
fire
You don't
department's
wanna have
happy to
around,
see
but
those,
even as a
you know,
temporary
just
basis,
the way it
do
is.
something like that.
So we're looking at, we looked at 5 different areas in the town. 3 of them are right off the no for us for leasing space. There's 2 that are viable and we're actually looking, we're trying to get our cost per building. I
Do
want
you
to,
have a list of qualifiers? Do you include or exclude?
yes.
In terms of square footage, those types of
Yeah.
things.
Yes, we do. It has to, we have to have at least, be able to have 14 people there. And so, right now, if you look at the SAU, it's 2,700 square feet. So we would need at least 3,000, maybe. But we know what the cost is per month for leasing. We know it's a triple net on the majority of the buildings, which means we have to pay for everything, taxes, everything, water, heat, electricity. So,
That's why I was asking about the temporary building.
Yeah, you
Not
have to
saying
remember-
I know it wouldn't be a permanent thing, but as, you know, I know a lot of taxpayers in my family, in my area, that are just really concerned about the taxes going up this year. So I'm just wondering what the contingency is. Yes, it would be great to save on busing, or Project Drive, have a safer place for the kids, so they can be up at high school. And great to save some money, you know, in temporarily, you know, I know leasing a space costs a lot of money.
Right.
You know, temporarily, you know, I don't like the idea of temporary structures either on the school grounds, but
so
just trying to figure out what all the options are that can work for everyone, even, you know, not a permanent thing, obviously,
So,
but.
what I found out around here is, Project Drive, at the time it was called SAU. Bales is supposed to be temporary. It's a temporary home for them. And we're 17, 18 years into it. And that's the reality. That's what happens. Everyone says it's good enough until we run into an issue with life safety.
I know down the road, we're gonna do a new school, be it a high school or an additional
Right.
elementary school, if you're thinking about selling jocks, whatever, Harry Pott's not gonna
Those are
accommodate all
additional
of that.
pieces within the feasibility study that we need to explore as we continue to.
So could
move forward.
offices be added on to a new building? You know, does it need to be a whole standalone building? Could offices
Yeah.
be added on to one of those?
So I just want to finish the comment.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. So you have to remember, when we're looking at lease space, they want a 5-year or 10-year commitment. And that's money we're just throwing out the window as far as I'm concerned. We're renting space. We don't own it. We have to, they may help if someone's built out, because not all the space is conducive for an SAU to walk in and use it. But we're gonna have to come up with that money, so it's money that we're pushing out every month. So, that's another thing to consider. I know the taxes are going up, and no one wants the taxes to go up. I live in Nashville, I don't want mine to go up either, so.
We're going to invite Bob to come on up.
I just wanted to
Hopefully
know.
absolutely.
Hopefully the video tour was a good visual to give you a sense of the interior, exterior of the Bales building. Bob at this point is going to give a little bit more information about the details that came out of the feasibility study with the various engineers that worked as part of his team. And then I believe you have some additional slides as well that will talk a bit about the building project. We certainly want to keep the conversation going here this evening, so feel free to keep asking your questions, and we'll go over here to Jenny and then over to Bob.
So I know this building is in deplorable condition. And like you said, it's only supposed to be temporary. And we really need to get those kids out of there just to get them integrated for them to have a free education, which is a legal requirement. This wouldn't be possible, since it's right now being used and it's housing children, students in the district, to instead of renting space or leasing space or bringing the buildings, temporary modular buildings, to to have all of the SAU temporarily for a year or two in the Bales building while other plans are made and get the students here and then try and figure out a workaround.
So that's a great question, and we thought about that. As soon as we move over there, we have to start on ADA. We have to do ramps. We have to make sure that people can get into the building. Right now, if you're in a wheelchair, or you're on crutches, in a wheelchair, you're not getting into the building because there's steps everywhere. The only place you can get in is the back, and you're only going to be on that landing, which is basically the basic level. If you're on crutches, those stairs are steep. So there's a lot of work that has to be done, even if we were to move the SAU in.
So what makes it, I don't understand, if it's just the SAU offices, how come that's mandated to the ADA, but when we have a special education building with
So let me-
offices and students, it's
So
okay?
let me address that, because you talk about really Bales like probably till midnight. It's a very complicated old building. And here's the situation. That building was designed at a time when none of this stuff was an issue. It's a very old building. It was added on to in the 30s, when I finished high school, I think. And so what's being done to it is what's been done to it in a very general term is just stopgap situations and also negotiations with the fire department. Okay? When you start touching this building to any significant level, I'm not even talking about the 30%, replacement cost rate beyond it to comply completely with the whole building. Everything you do is going to have to fully comply. And when you provide offices or offices that are accessed by the public, okay, you have to provide equal accommodation. So whatever has to be done to that building, just because it's SAU offices and not for students, does not really change the paradigm as far as life safety, accessibility, or viability of that building in terms of quality of air and viability of the whole building, regardless of whether it's adults occupying it or kids, and or any access by the public or employees of the district. So there's no difference really. There's a few other issues that are correlated only to children, but beyond that point, it doesn't really matter.
So there would be less total people in the building if there were only SAU staff?
But it's not an occupancy number issue.
Okay. And any of the meetings that they would need to have, because I don't believe that there's any ADA requirement for any district employees that are in the SAU. So if they were to have meetings, it would not be a building that the public would go to. They could schedule all of their meetings at whatever school the students are in.
Would it say this? While I've been here, I've had 2 knee surgeries, and I've been on crutches. And just those stairs out back are a pain. And to go from that building over to this building or another building, as far as I see it, is a disservice to me. Okay? They're asking me to go somewhere to satisfy someone else who's coming in. I don't think that that's correct or that's necessary. I think
This is only for like 2
move,
years for a stopgap.
Jenny, so if someone comes there and says, I don't want the meeting at the high school, I want the meeting here. Your office is there, I want to be able to get into this building. They have a case. I'm surprised it hasn't happened yet with that building. So, we're on borrowed time as far as when I look at it. I think it's, not a matter of if, but when. And
I'm not sure about, we'll get off the weeds. I'm not sure about any labor agreements with your school employees or whatever. I will tell you that I know ADA very well. Title I, Title II, Title III. And I will tell you that you provide equal accommodations for accessibility. And that's the employees in public, Title I and Title II. So, I'm not sure what your situation is, but I can tell you for sure that you have to provide accommodations for public and probably for employees within that facility. Equal accommodations to all functions and accommodations, meaning drink pumps, toilets, et cetera. And if you want to come visit somebody, I'm a public and I want to go visit Christie, I have to be providing accommodations. Whether you can skirt that, and eat at some other location, I can't comment. I'm not a school operational
But
person,
we can
but
get it in any other building,
Yeah.
we have it here, so that's why they can use student service, they come in the front entrance, they can come in, just about any entrance except the SAU and the TV studio. They can get into jobs, they can get into Heron Pond, they can get into the middle school. If we were there, and someone said, I want to get in to see you, and it happened to be someone from the town, or even your brother, sister, grandmother, grandfather, and they can't get into the building, we have to be able to accommodate people getting into the building, the same.
well, do you still want to do the bed slides, or you want me to do these, or?
Yeah, right ahead.
Okay, thank you. Quick, I guess that would be a clicker, if I'm going to be up here, where I can use you. I can use the Christie clicker. So my name is Bob Rochek, I'm a principal with Valley Brensing Architects. I work with Lance Whitehead, who is our K-12 civic studio leader. I've been doing this for over 43 years. My key role in the project was in the first phase that we completed. When we complete that, Christie built an initial assessment and then the initial master plan before we got, it was completed like in the spring of last year.
Completed in the
Spring of last year, and I looked at all the facilities that the district owns. And when we were talking about Bales as a part of that, when we looked at the high school, we looked at all of those. And we also did a kind of a very high level master plan for the district. Some of that was mentioned in the last 30 minutes as well. I live in New Hampshire, 30 minutes away, my taxes went up. I do 95% of my work is public work, so I understand public work. We're not spendthrifts, I understand. Like I said, I'm feeling that pain in my own community with my taxes going up. So I just want to make sure that you guys don't identify from LA or something, or drove in from Boston tonight, okay? To kind of swam in from Manchester. So I'm not going to belabor this stuff. My master's degree in architecture was a concentration in historic preservation. So I totally get the whole historic preservation thing, but I also have an MBA and I get the business part of it too, a business degree, and I get that. And I think the issue is this building has a lot of challenges. I think that video is really, good in that respect. It's one thing to touch it, stopgap, like fire safing the openings or fixing a leaky unit, but overall, it really needs a lot of DLC. A lot of money could be spent on this building. If you were to move, for example, just address the question about, in the end, it's a decision you guys have to make. We're not going to dictate to you whether you should move the SAU, the Bales or not, but I would say that's throwing good money after that. Everything you do in that building, you're going to build from scratch. Inside that building has to meet current codes, life safety, ADA, everything. And then you still have the accessibility issue because when the school was built, I think the more levels it were, probably the better it was. I never got that personally. I went to schools like that in 66, and I've gone to schools that were built like this, But to make it accessible is a challenge, but also life safety and other code issues are, an issue. Putting part of an SAU in there probably may or may not hit their replacement value, but it's going to be darn close. We can't decide that. Once you get beyond that point, the whole building has, basement to roof with current codes, and that's a whole other thing. That's what the larger money. So I'm not going to reread this. You guys can all read the slide. And these are just the costs to address this Dale Doler, who from our office was the architect who ran the existing conditions reports along with our mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and structural and civil engineers that we had on our team to do look at all the buildings, the jobs in high school, everything. And these are just the midterm, I believe, bill, and the short and midterm expenses that would be required to just address continued stopgap issues. That's regardless of renovating actual classrooms, educational pedagogical spaces, and regardless of the renovation, like, moving an SAU there. They should kind of keep it going, would you say, Bill? Is that fair to say? They just keep it going. So the overall larger number would be to really renovate the entire building to be fully compliant, to renovate all levels. And that would be, upwards of over $8.1 or $8.2 million. So today's money, not, you guys all know what's going on in the construction industry. So the next question. You've already seen this, it's on the boards. Again, we're here to help you go through the right decision. We don't have an axe to grind on this thing. Everything that's on there has already been covered. One of the key things that hasn't been mentioned is the fact that the district owns expensive mobile equipment. It's a fancy way of saying trucks and plows and front lifters that are literally sitting outside right now. And it's expensive stuff, and they really should not be sitting outside in the weather and the climate that we live in. That's expensive rolling stock, and the ability to maintain it, store it, maintain it, be able to have appropriate maintenance facilities for it as a part of the SAU project, because it's not just an SAU, it's an SAU/maintenance. I'll talk about that in a minute. So anything you guys want to add to that before I go into the SAU maintenance program? Yes, I'm sorry.
And not being argumentative, being informative, took the time to talk with some large paving contractors and heavy equipment people. They just pointed to their equipment and said, we bought it. It stays outside for 20 years or so. It's useful to us. And then we either refurbish it and it stays outside as long as it's useful, or we sell it and we get good money. To that end, is this the part of the phase where you're going to do maintenance on it?
So that not to revolve as informational too, the town keeps their equipment inside. They have bays where they keep all their trucks. We use them year round. They plow for us. They whatever else we want to haul. We do a lot with our trucks. So I really don't want to come back every 3 years asking for $70,000 to $80,000 for a new piece of equipment. We just purchased a new truck for $65,000, or actually closer to 70 because we can plow cost us $7,800. So I just don't want to do that because I don't think it's fair. I think that if we could house most of our equipment indoors, I wouldn't be coming. I would wait 10 or 15 years to ask for replacement. But it's kind of tough.
To get to this point where you have rendering in your architectural plans,
Conceptual.
you had, you presented the board with a cost of $130,000 to do that, is that?
No. The study, phase 2, incorporates all the school district facilities. The SAU actually is the smallest component of it. So I can go through that process when you get into the SAU.
So I'm just wondering, because I looked through, it's a shame that no one from the board is here, because this is their project, which they really need to be selling, and they're absent. And nowhere in any of the minutes since December of 2020 can I find a motion, a vote, and approval to spend funds for doing conceptual drawings and the architectural.
So, excuse me. It was back in before, it was, we were in, it was the summer. We would have to go back to March, April 2020 when we started. They approved $98,000 for the feasibility study, which we
And this
picked.
came out of the feasibility study.
So, let me finish. So we had the feasibility study for that. It came through, and then they presented in April of last year, 21, correct?
Yeah, you're approaching.
And at that time, you know, to move forward, they had said, I think they had told us, it was another 130,000 that they said we could use. And that's where all of this, for the renderings, conceptuals, all the print material, this is where it's coming. Anytime we ask them to come down and, you know, we're rendering or they're sending people over, that's what we're paying for. That's where it's all coming from. So we're already into this project for $230,000.
So they did give you the 130,000.
But wait a minute, so there's more detail than that. This, they use a small part of the study. It's the smallest part of the study, okay? We're looking at the high school master plan, we're looking at jocks, we're looking at possible new elementary school or jocks in that area behind jocks. We're looking at the middle school and the whole campus here. So this piece actually is the smallest piece of that study. It just because of the timing to go to a warrant article, this was pushed forward first. We're working with the facilities committee and the board on the high school and the other parts like the middle school and other parts of the school district. That's just the first piece that's moved forward. That money was not just for this project. I'm very clear about that. Actually, a relatively small part of that money went to what we've done so far for this project.
So I'm just asking a question.
Yep.
Did you receive $130,000 from the district to put together this,
No.
what you've done so far since the feasibility study?
No, they bill progress payments. That's not how we do it. They
Right.
bill us whenever they do something. Say we spent 5 hours doing this, we're gonna charge you $2,500 or whatever it is. I don't know how the bills are, but that's how they get paid. Am I correct in that, Jake?
So the board never specifically.
They said the number was 130,000. That was not to exceed that.
But they never voted.
I get, you're,
I'm just saying, they never voted.
I don't know, and I'm not a board member, so I wouldn't be able to tell you.
So it's coming out of the district budget without, I'm just saying that there was no.
But
The
I'm not,
public was not.
so Jenny, I'm not here to talk about the board, I'm here to talk about the
I know,
project.
but this is the board's project, and I understand totally this administrative team needs, and totally deserves a functioning, safe building with their lives not being. I totally understand that. I'm just saying that there were months and months and months where this board just completely dropped.
Once again,
Everything, they haven't done anything.
well, once again, we're not here to talk about the board, we're here to talk about the relocation of the project right here, of the SAU and the maintenance building. And
Okay,
that's,
so-
I just want to get to that.
So at the deliberative session, Judy, the chair, did say that the total feasibility study came to a little over $100 million, $128 million for redoing all of the buildings, the SAU, and getting everything fully ADA compliant was the guess in the feasibility study.
No, so, no, that's not correct. So the feasibility study did not come even close to $100 million. If we were to build a new high school, a new elementary school, the SAU and the maintenance building, and do all that, it would be $105 million that we would have to bond out if we wanted a new building. It had nothing to do with the feasibility study. The feasibility study, which they've been paid for, was $98,000.
No, I'm saying that was the total cost to the district for the full scope of the plan. What I'm trying to understand is how we went from, okay, here's the feasibility study. There were 5 main points that your company brought forward to the board that really, really needed to be done. One of them was getting the kids out of jobs, getting the kids out of Bales, redoing doing the SAU, so you can move the high school kids back in here. And then the high school and CTE facilities, because it is so locally outdated and inadequate to 21st century practice.
This is the first domino.
Okay.
Everything's in, so this has to fall first before we can get into anything else.
I'm trying to figure out how we went from 100 million to, this is the project that we must do now.
Because this is the first domino that has to fall. I would like to get Project Drive over here so that we can stop spending money at Bales.
I understand you
Okay, so that's the first domino that has to
but the
fall.
board has never explained this to the community at all.
Okay, so that's, anybody that has stopped me and asked me, I said, this is the first domino that has to fall. Okay?
I think it was explained by the Valley Renziger when they did their comprehensive study. So in April of last year, there was a very, very comprehensive report, several slides long. That PowerPoint is available on the school district website. As part of that project, towards the end of their slides, they presented a timeline that shows several years of projects that would fulfill the repair and maintenance and the details that were captured in that feasibility study, right, over time. And so that timeline, I think, is maybe what you're referring to, right? And so some of the first projects that were identified in that timeline are the ones that you're seeing here today. When the board put together the subcommittee, facilities committee, see a picture of it there? We took a look at that timeline and studied what would make the most sense if we were going to put something forward to the voters in March. So, again, these are all major projects that have been outlined, but we're going to take further study, further work of the facilities committee, more informational sessions like this, and discussions with people from the community to really achieve what some of those projects look like in that timeline as we go about 5-10 years.
Yeah, I think, Jenny, right? I think what Jenny's saying is what I'm hearing. My name's Bill King. I'm a resident here for my kids and not through the school.
Thanks for being here tonight.
I'm also here to stay around, so. What I'm hearing from other people that aren't at this community, that's a shame, is that a lot of people don't understand how we got here, including myself, who's just going to be in that speech. I went on the website, I looked for the feasibility study, it wasn't there. I contacted Judy, she sent me a copy. So a lot of this stuff isn't really transparent or clear to the public. So part of the presentation, I think what people are looking for is how did we get to this point? Maybe just a couple of introductory slides that said, okay, this is where we were 2 years ago, this is what transpired, this is where we are today, this is why we're doing this project. There's a lot of people that aren't going to buy into this project because they think it's a knee-jerk reaction. It's just, we just decided to look up one morning and decided to replace our project with a building. And I think that's what would be very helpful.
It was definitely a very tight timeline from the completion of the feasibility project to study to where we are today. Very, very tight. I know in any of the building projects that I've ever been part of, it's usually a good year's worth of time to have the public forums, really talk and study, the various aspects of it. So we certainly understand that this was very tight. But I think, I've got to certainly provide some credit to the folks that came together from our community, our staff, parents that served on the advisory committee that the board put together. Their first meeting of that subcommittee wasn't until October, and that's when they really came together with the Valley Renziger, really dived into that feasibility study, looked at the recommendations, looked at what some of our short and long-term goals are. And again, not a lot of time between then and where we are today, but certainly a project that we felt good about in terms of being able to move forward, because it really does allow for that reintegration of the Project Drive students here to the high school. And that was definitely a significant priority. as well as some of the identified cost savings. When you think about $70,000 worth of transportation costs that are just middle of the day. We're not talking about picking kids up from their homes in the morning and bringing them home in the afternoon. We're talking about $70,000 worth of bus going back and forth all day long between the high school and the Bales building. So we're thinking about, is there a project that we could potentially put forward in this short time frame that would be that could potentially be attractive to the voters in terms of cost savings, relocation of our Project Drive students, also a facility for our SAU offices, and protective location for the equipment and the expensive vehicles. That's sort of, those are some of the things that this committee really thought about and tried to put forward. But again, we agree in a very short time frame, not a lot of time.
You have some?
I just want to run.
Yep, go ahead.
I just want to run the question. I'm going to get them.
That's right, go ahead.
Thanks for coming tonight.
If, going back, if you had to lease office space for the SAU, do you have what an estimated cost that would be?
Yeah, it's, we're looking, it bounces. So
I
just for the
understand
lease
on your
payment,
part.
just the lease is, it could be 2,000, it could be 7,000 or 8,000 a month. So that's where we're looking, and that's why we're trying to figure out if we can get everybody into some of these spaces.
There's a couple of options there, but as variant as those prices are that you just heard, that's also the difference in build-out costs, right?
I was going to just say that it depends whether it includes a build-up, because then again, you have to actually build a space out, and once the landlord, wants that 5-year commitment, like you said, or probably at least 5, it has to amortize the cost of that build-out. It's not a space that would just move 14, 15 people and all the requirements of meeting space or whatever, but.
I understand that.
But, no, I know you do. I'm just saying that's why the big variation, and it's also how the landlords amortize their cost.
Exactly.
Right.
Thank you very much.
So-
I'm sorry we didn't stay that long.
Thank you.
Thanks very much for being here.
How big is the new building that you guys are planning to build?
Well, I can address, we never got that far so far, but the building itself, we can go to the floor plan discussion, I'll present it real quick. So the building went through a lot of, so this is where, the building went through a lot of iterations, and we really whittled it down to be the most functional. It's not a Taj Mahal, it's very tight. So just really quickly, basically,
8950.
it's a 8950 gross square footage, out of which the maintenance is about 30 to 300 feet of that, the maintenance piece. Then the offices is about 2,800 square feet. Then we have shared space between the functions in the middle and some circulation, which is in yellow. So the building itself is gross total, including the maintenance space and all the maintenance facility staff's areas, toilets and some lockers, is approximately 8,900 square feet.
How much is the maintenance building?
Pardon me?
The garage, how big was the?
No, the garage is not just the garage, it's the whole garage plus the,
How big?
yeah, that's approximately,
3,300.
about 3,300 square feet.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
You're welcome.
We got it, 5 bays,
So,
plus support space.
yes,
Thank you.
add a
You're
little
welcome.
history to what you were asking. I don't know if you were on we broached that subject when you were on the board, Jenny, about the Red Barn. I know Mike Hannon was there, I'm trying to think who else was on the board. Because what we found was that 2 of the main beams had slipped, and the floor fell in, and the building was leaning to the east. So we had a structural engineer come in, and he said, hey, we want to, you're going to have to do this, you're going to have to do this. So just to repair the barn itself was $150,000 without the floor, just to get the building upright. So that's how this all started. And I think that was, I want to say 3 years ago, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was 3 or 4. Okay. So that's where this all started. We didn't want to keep our grounds equipment in there, so we at the time, our tractor was only a few years old. We spent $60,000 on it. And then all the other equipment that we had for landscaping for athletic fields, we were probably looking at $125,000 worth of equipment. The last thing I need to do is come in and find out that we ruined it because the barn fell. So that's where this all started. When LBA came on, I said, I also want you to look at building a new maintenance building, either where the barn is or somewhere close to the high school. And they did that. And we went back and forth with discussions with the board, and they said, well, you know, we'd like to do something else. And then when we were talking, we said, why can't we move the SAU at the same time and see if we could do that? That's how this all morphed into where we are today. So it started a few years ago.
So this plan that has developed, is it like a 10-year plan? I
So-
don't have that timelines.
I didn't bring it with me. I know Bill has it. It's available, can be shared. I don't bring it with me today. I know that we shared it. It's like,
Yeah,
it's about a
we
10
can, if you
year.
want to stop by, you have that one right there. I think I have another copy.
Right, so-
Look, sure. I have the same one.
No, the Milford K-12.org website is not really intuitive. Have been learning it, but is there a place you can direct us to?
Yeah, in fact, actually, why don't I, maybe it would be helpful if I sort of navigate and you can. And I'm wondering if maybe for that same reason, Mr. King, is the reason why you were unable to find the documents that you were looking for. Perhaps they were not easy to locate.
So to answer your question, Phil, about how we're doing this, that's not $130,000 for the SAU and all that. So we did an initial master plan and evaluation of the building. And all that stuff's available. I'm sure it's publicly available. Once we got through that, the board asked us to take on a more detailed look at a master plan, to implement that master plan and go through more of a conceptual level look at it. Because the SAU was the first piece, I think you said the first domino, which I agree, because to enable everybody else to move here, to mothball Bales, we had to make that the first thing. While we're doing that, we're working on the high school, the middle school, and the possible K through 5. So this is just the first thing out of the box that we're working on initially. While we're still doing the rest of that other stuff, we're working on a regular basis, and there's gonna be more meetings that we're gonna have. So I just want to explain the process because I don't want people to think that this is the holy grail of this project and this is it, right? So.
And I believe what Mr. Cooper has done with our website employee is to actually take the feasibility study apart by the individual, the smaller report. So you can see here that the first one listed is the assessment report specifically for the high school, middle school, the Bales, Harricon, Jacques, some other supporting documents. The presentations that were made to the board last year are listed just below here. So the master facilities assessment plan and the master planning and feasibility study. These are both PowerPoint presentations. Within the PowerPoint presentation, you'll see that timeline that we were referring to earlier.
And just so you know, the reason why, well, I think you got a dead link on your site, because I was under the school board.
Uh-huh.
And then when you go into the school board, there's a feasibility report, you click on that one,
Yes.
and it comes up error 404.
All right, so 2 ways to be able to get to this page. So you go to departments, then down to maintenance and facilities.
Yeah.
From maintenance and facilities, you can select the feasibility project. The other way to do that is under school board, under community committees, and then specifically the
Special advisor.
Yes.
Special advisory.
Yep, the special advisory subcommittee can be also there. So perhaps maybe at the time, there might have been a dead link you thought?
Yeah, it was only 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
Would you please go to the first page and then the because I was shocked that about us, I think, and the people.
That's this
Now,
particular
down to staff. Well, SAU staff, right there, and then I was shocked at what I saw next. It says, interim superintendent.
That hasn't been fixed yet?
Still having to carry two responsibilities.
I will have that taken care of first thing tomorrow morning.
I know we're on a clock.
Either that, we got to
Yes.
Yeah, I need to continue.
Yeah, so I just wanted to make clear, because a question was raised about, what place this SAU maintenance facility had within the grant plan. And just the first domino, we were working actively with Bill and his staff and the facilities advisory committee, my director, Bill?
Yes.
Facilities advisory committee and the board on the high school, and we just talked about it a little bit earlier. So we're working concurrent on all these things. This is the first thing out of the box. So I'm gonna go through this pretty quick because we're almost out of time. I'm gonna swing back to Londonderry where I live. Probably do the backstroke all the way there. So you guys are familiar, you live in town, you know this. One of the things that we were charged with is not really major impacting, on the loop road. The facility will take the space in the middle of it. We have plenty of parking there. The concept came through a programming effort where we sat down with district staff, found out what's required. We're always looking at something that's 20 years out. You never program or build a building for current need because it could be obsolete the day you move in. That's not a good way to do a project. However, this thing has very modest growth built in. It was like one office, I think. We went to a lot of iterations. There was a large meeting room, which was originally there, then we took that out. And again, it's not a Taj Mahal, it's a modest facility. That explains it. I'm gonna see if we got the right button here. Yep.
You gotta have Alexa or Siri.
Yeah, exactly. Or longer arms. This just shows the building on the site. There's one of the key issues providing adequate parking. We wanted to show that conceptually, not to interfere with the middle school. It doesn't. We understand the traffic that goes there. The building also fronts on Osgood Road, so the front of the building faces, at least as a money shot, so people can actually see the money that's spent on the building. It faces the main road. This is just a closer look at it. The building is very compact. One of the key things we had to, deal with was really how to separate SAU staff on the left, have a central entrance for the building for the public. Public does use this building and can come to talk to you. SAU staff, both public and also consultants and vendors. And that's a reality that has to do with accessibility as well. But it's a very tight building. The middle is made up of basically bathrooms, a mid-sized conference room, a small lobby reception, which is actually one of the offices there now. And the same person sits here over there in that space. To the right side in green are all the functions for the maintenance facility. There's 5 vehicle bays. There's some mechanical space. There's some much needed room for tools and storage and equipment, which currently doesn't exist really. Toilet rooms for maintenance staff, and then a shared office and break space for the maintenance staff, okay? So the idea is that people come in from outside, they're muddy, or they have oil on their boots, they're not tramping through the SAU space, which is more office type space, right?
And then one of the big issues with maintenance was they wanted to be able to sit down, have their lunch, and work on their computers. They have a Chromebook, so they can do work orders. They didn't want to do it inside of where the trucks are, and because they don't have any room. So it was.
So that's that space up there.
Put the space in the break room.
I should have brought a pointer, I didn't think so. But, and so there's a really good separation here between maintenance staff and the offices. It's a compact building. The idea was to provide, what?
It's right here.
But, oh, that's fine. I think it's pretty simple, but Vanna can help me. And really, one of the things we want to do is have daylight to the offices, and that's just cheap. And
Doesn't a laptop have a mouse?
I don't know, but it's fine. You guys can hear me. So the building, so we went to a lot of iterations also on the building. We want to make it something that's more residential looking. It's surrounded by houses. It doesn't have to be large scale, it has to be friendly. We looked at materials, costs are an issue, so we looked at doing a siding situation instead of masonry brick, it's very expensive. So this has already been value engineered already, working with district staff and also Turnstone, who was hired to do some estimating on this project as an owner's rep on the project. So it has to meet the state energy codes. It's a building that you're going to own for 30, 40 years or more, so it is not a retail shopping center where you're going to turn around and resell it. So it has to be a durable building, but it's economical.
So I can't stress this enough. The 3.34 million that, were proposed for 5 years is the highest that we would ever go. Because that was an estimate that was given to us by the construction managers, Turnstone. They estimated everything. We would still go out to bid to see if we could get that number lower.
Competitive bidding.
We would go out to 5 or 6 different contractors out there.
Yeah.
So that number may come down, but it will never go any higher.
So December 8th, La Valley Brensinger sent a letter to the school district office, quoted them a rough estimate of $975 for the building. And then in the plan that was brought,
Did you say
75,000.
975,000?
That was for the maintenance building alone, the standalone maintenance building.
Okay, so
Which is a pre-engineered building.
in this big, in this presentation that was made June 1st, on, I don't know what number slide it is, but it was presented April 19th and then again on the 21st of June. It had the maintenance building at $650,000 and SAU offices at $950,000, so it was $1.6 million. And then in November, then we saw the 3.3.
They were, the first numbers were estimates given to us by LBA and their architects, so they're just telling us this is where we should be. We had to get our construction manager on board. So we went out to bid, 5, 6 companies,
Yes,
construction managers.
6 at least.
Turnstone was the lowest, $4,500. We turned everything, we had a meeting with them. First big meeting, we had superintendent, business administrator, myself, LBA was there. We talked about this entire building, and what we were looking for, how big. So we do a span so that there is no breaks in the, of the maintenance bay. So we went over all the iterations for this. Came back, talked to them again, they finally came back with numbers and said, due to the cost of lumber going up, steel going up, everything's going up. Steel alone went up, I think, 57%. So that number got inflated. And I even said to Turnstone, Stacy Clark was the president, we would like to come in at about $1.5 million. And when we sat down, when they gave us the numbers, she said, I can't even come close to that right now because of the numbers that are out there.
Yeah,
And these are every,
Can I say one more thing, though? Can I say one more thing? It's not an apples to apples from whatever you're reading, because that was before we programmed the space. It was a back of napkin number. That's what we're doing the phase we're doing now. Those numbers were not something to go, oh, well, it's $175,000 and that's what it's going to be. We hadn't even programmed the building in, and for the maintenance building, it was maybe basically a glorified re-engineered shed. So I think that there's not an apples to apples comparison from what you're referring to, ma'am, to where we are now, because we didn't program it yet at the time. It was a high level look at it, okay? The other thing is, what Bill mentioned is, yeah, construction costs are up probably 35% in the last 18 months. But that's not all of it. It's partly the fact that the project's being developed in more detail, okay? That's the best I can explain it.
that's why the price went up. And I know that when we budget, when I'm asked to budget for projects, so if we were to do asbestos abatement and the classrooms on the north side, I would budget it $9 a square foot. Because that's the going rate for asbestos, right? So if you're writing that down, like it's 324,000 for Bales. I already did the numbers.
Okay.
36,000 times 9, we came up with 324,000 just for abatement. So add that, that's not even in the $8 million that we were looking at. So think about that.
Yeah.
So, and you know that we would then get at least 3 companies together and say, give me a quote on 1,200 square feet of asbestos abatement. And that's how we do the budget. And then we come to a number and we would bring it to the board at the time and say, this is what we're doing. And sometimes those numbers, I look and say, we can come up with this because it's way out of whack. So that's where we are. And I really tried to keep this number under the $2 million mark, and just, we couldn't do it.
I just wish this had started happening in April.
We did too.
This,
We do too. You know,
this
but
could have become a reality. There's no idea.
Jenny, that's part of what the school budget advisory committee is proposing for this coming, to get it ahead of the budget cycle. By the time we formed up this year, at full gallop, we ended up Boston, and we've got the.
And I think one of the issues is we knew this was a gamble to get it on the, but we wanted to get it on the books to open it up. And with the pandemic, you know, we were, I think everyone was behind the 8 ball. No one was getting together. I'm tired of Zoom meetings.
So,
You know, so that's to get people together. So
and the board was overtaken by all this crazy mask stuff. But what I took away from the initial was, this is the presentation, these are the things you need to do the most. Go to your community, survey them, and find out what the community wants to do. And my only concern is that if we do, and I know how badly this is needed, I know it's the smallest price ticket item in the whole entire thing, but I am so scared that this is gonna push off definitely 5, if not 10 years, any new building for the schools, because no one will be willing to put after $4 million. And we desperately need schools to figure out how to put together and maybe get these ARPA funds that are coming, or the high school and CTE, to be the stopgap funding measure, so we can get the biggest bang out of the district's buck and start building an educational facility that these kids desperately need. I mean, this building has floor tile that's asbestos. This building has no air filtration whatsoever. And it's 2022 and we're in a 1964 building. I mean, walking down halls, it's like, you know, happy
1960.
days.
1960. I'm just telling, I know that each building, you know, you're right. I'm not arguing. Our newest building was built in 2001.
I mean, it's gonna be painful.
And then you
But we
have
have to pull the community
jobs
into
was
understanding.
58, like, and middle school was 72.
And not doing half measures and small projects. You know, we got a red bullet. I mean, they did Parent Pond. They need to do another building.
Part of the Milford, town of Milford, community investment program / citizens advisory committee was the idea that boom, here's the gestalt of everything we gotta do. Now, how do we time phase it? How do we look at fire trucks? Everybody's got a house or something, and the fire trucks are going up 20% per year. But we have a library, the gym, #1 in the state, and you can't use parts of it. So, we've got to find a way, working together, that we can
Well, we have a
ration.
master plan that was
Right.
last updated in 2016,
Yes,
but most of it was written in 1999
correct.
and updated in 2008. So the 2016 said Jacques and Bales and this high
You're
school
right.
were no longer useful. They were past their useful life in 2008.
And what has happened, unfortunately,
We have a planning
Is the
board that's
town.
appointed and they haven't done anything.
But we also, just like, and I'm gonna sing the
I'm
praises.
so sorry to hijack your.
No, it's fine.
I'm gonna sing the praises of LBA, because they did
Don't worry about
a
it.
tremendous job looking at every building.
They gave the board step by step.
They
how to do
Besides-
it.
they provided us with
Besides-
some
besides-
unbelievable information. They really
besides
did.
all-
And that information should be helping us
Yes.
as a school district and as a community to make some informed decisions about how.
I
to
just
run
want
it.
everyone to understand that deferred maintenance alone, we're at $22 million. And that's
Yeah, when
including
we-
their feasibility study.
When we did, you know, I know we're over the timeline, but when we did that initial look-see at the place, now we didn't, look under every, tile or whatever, we would have spent probably 2 years doing that, but we did a pretty good level look at it, to be able to cost load that work. And that was, I'm gonna tell you something, I'm gonna sidebar for a second. I bought a lot in Londonderry, where I live, in November of 20. And I built a house there. It's a smaller house. My other house was about this gym, this cafeteria. And from the time I built that house and I locked into a number with the contract, I told you, listen to this. Now, I'm in the industry, okay? I live this every day. From the time I bought the lot and I worked with a builder who happily owned the lots, but I customized it, but it was a kind of a standard plan. Whatever. It's not a Taj Mahal, just like this building is not a Taj Mahal. From the time I signed on that line, and I moved in the end of July of last year. So it took about 8 months to build. That same house is 28% more with the same builder. Think about that. 28% more. So time is nobody's friend. Our firm's probably working with upwards of 20 communities in northern New England, okay, north of the Mass line, either in public safety, or at schools, or at town halls, or things like that. Everybody is dealing with it.
That's why we're trying to pick
Now,
up some of
having
that stuff.
exactly, having said that, I think that, I understand the board. We met with the board several times. We met with facilities committees 3 times in 2021. Once they were convened, we met over in the library, actually. We're going to meet again, probably in a couple of weeks. So, and that's why I want to clarify with you that,
Listed publicly, since it's a public meeting, public needs to.
I can't speak to that. So anyway, we just asked to come when we come. I can't speak to that. So that's why I want to be very clear that this thing is only the first step in that study. We're looking at the high school holistically. The board gave us some direction about where they want to see sort of that scope of that project going. We're looking at what to do with shocks and the land behind it, because it's somebody, I think you mentioned, or somebody mentioned, not the land behind
We're
it.
looking at the land that,
Sorry.
we still have the master plan from the town.
Right.
It's gonna deed us 35 acres over by here.
Correct, I'm sorry about Harriman Pond, excuse me.
Yeah.
So because
Still
they,
have.
On Bronx River.
right, I'm
And
sorry, I
I
meant to say,
talked with Lincoln Daly, and he said that's.
so
still
behind
the
Harriman Pond, not
plan.
behind.
Over by here.
I was confused, I'm sorry. So, because Bales and shocks are tied together, somebody mentioned like an hour, you can't get to one or the other, you can't, so I can't speak to the planning, for the town, but the concept of this phase 2, let's call it Fremont phase 2 study, is to give further blueprint, no pun intended, further blueprint on a conceptual level, kind of similar to what we did here, to these other facilities, so that the town and the school district has that road path, and can decide what they want to do. But none of it, and I think you put it perfectly in the first domino, none of it can happen until, people move out of Bales into here. If you look at the SAU office, they're incredibly cramped. We had a meeting there with Turnstone, there were 8 of us, and I think we had to walk in sideways into the only meeting room in the space. And I'm kind of a big guy, but we had to walk in sideways. So, one of the things we hear as architects, I'm gonna get on my soapbox for a minute, is, you're designing the Taj Mahal, you don't need all this stuff. Let me tell you, we're New Hampshire people. We live in New Hampshire town, just like you do. And we totally understand that mindset, I'm not coming in from, Beverly, Mass, or someplace like that. We totally get it. Lance gets
I
it.
know it's
I
a
grew
big
up
ask.
last year. I'm from Newton, Mass.
There you go.
Um,
But you know what I'm talking about, right? There's a whole mindset. They're building $115 million high schools in Mass.
The big difference.
You know what I'm
between
talking about,
Mass and
right?
Mass, they seem to build all those, because they have not only the support, but
They
they
have
have
state funding going.
State funding.
Because they have state income
Yeah.
tax.
The-
But,
big money.
but there are a lot of people who are moving into this community,
Sure.
and these homes are no longer priced as starter homes. So you're no longer.
That's happening in my town too.
I mean,
I
right
think,
across the
Jenny,
street.
what I want to say, right, is that because there are people who are continuing to move into our community, and people like yourselves that are interested and want to continue this conversation, I invite people to learn more, to continue the conversation along with us. I want to thank Lavelle Gritzinger, Bob, for coming out tonight, and
My pleasure.
the great work of your team.
No, it's fine. It's no problem.
Mr. Cooper, thank you so much. Thanks for coming out tonight.
Yep.
Let's keep this conversation going. It's a conversation that is very important. There's a lot more to come over the next
Yeah, a
several
lot of moving
years,
pieces to this whole thing.
But really, we
It's
need
just
to be
one
talking
piece.
as a community about
Yeah.
how best to maintain our facilities, right? Our investments. So thanks again for coming out tonight.
Yep.
For the recording, I'm going to let that finish up, and certainly if you have any more questions, I just want to make sure for the recording that we have us at the end. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.